At this point, you should have seen already the video on how to create the roof framing plan in AutoCAD. And video is just going to give you some ideas on how to create the roof framing plan in Revit, because that's ultimately what I want for this exercise or this assignment. So the final Revit plan will look like this. This is, of course, more on the AutoCAD side, but I wanted to follow this format for our Revit file. And a couple of things that I want to highlight is, if you notice, the walls are not as dark on this plan in particular. The walls are a little bit kind of gray, and they're a little bit lighter. And if you notice, the roof framing portion is darker. So that's what I want to do on our roof framing plan. So how do we accomplish that? On Revit, at this point, you should have a roof. The roof could be different. It's your design. It's however you want to do your roof in whatever style you want. So I'm just going to use this one in particular. And at this point, you should have all your different plans already and as part of the same project. Okay, and we should have these sheets, maybe a few more or less. I'm not sure, but I guess it depends on your project. But we do need to create another sheet. So we do need to look for a plan or a view that will emulate or make it look like this as much as possible. And one that we can use is called the ceiling plan. This is called a reflected ceiling plan because we have the level 1 floor plan, but it doesn't show us the roof. If we go to the level 1 ceiling plan, that one shows the walls and the roof. It's kind of like the way the ceiling plan is a reflected ceiling plan is the way they refer to, where you're looking at it as if you're looking down on the floor plan, but at a reflection on the floor to look back up to the roof. Okay, so that's why we use, in this case, a reflected ceiling plan. The reflected ceiling plan shows the roof and the walls, and that's pretty much the layout that we need. But once again, we want it to look more like this is the final layout. So a couple of things that we're going to do is, to this reflect the ceiling plan, of course, you always want to leave that one alone. Always, 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 always make a duplicate. In this case, I don't have any dimensions that I want to keep, so I'm just going to make a regular duplicate. And to this one is the one that I'm going to rename, and I'm going to call this one roof framing plan. And as far as the roof framing plan, you notice that I don't really see the roof itself completely. It kind of gets hidden underneath the walls. So one thing that I can do to make sure that I can see the whole thing is I can change the visual style from a regular hidden line over to a wireframe. And what that does is that it makes everything transparent. I can see through everything. Okay, so that's called a wireframe. So that's the first thing I did. The other thing too is I want to make the roof itself darker and everything else kind of like a grayed out layout, so that it's the emphasis is on the roof. So I'm going to go to visibility and graphic overrides. And on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the roof. Well, I guess what I'll do first is I want to select everything else and make that gray. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, click select all. So it selects everything, and I'm going to half tone. I'll just click any one of these, and it's going to select the entire list and make everything half tone or like a gray. Okay. The only thing I do not want to be gray at this point would actually be the roof. If I can find it on the list, there it is. The roof one, I'm going to take off the half tone and apply that one because I want that to be dark. And the other thing too is I want these lines to be darker. So I want to change the weight of the roof. So I'm going to go back to the visibility graphic overrides. And I can change that here, or I can select the roof, right click, and override graphics and view by element. It's kind of the same thing. And I'm going to go to the projection lines, and I'm going to adjust the weight of the projection lines, which is the roof. I'm going to make that to maybe like a weight, let's go with a weight 6. Apply that. There we go. Well, that might be a little bit too much. Okay, we'll leave it like that for now, and then hit OK. All right, and then another thing I want to start doing is setting the scale of my drawing. That's usually the first thing you want to do before you start putting any types of annotations. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new sheet. I'm going to use my C size. And then I'm going to drag and drop the ceiling plan, the roof framing plan, drag and drop it onto the sheet. and determine the scale. I think the scale, well, I can tell you, the scale is too small. So I'm going to go to a 3/8 of an inch, maybe. 3/8 would actually fit. But I think what I'm going to have you guys do is change it over to a 1/4 inch equals a foot. I want everybody to use this one because on this same sheet, we're going to add another view called a wall section on the next lesson. So that's the scale we're going to be using. 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. Very good. Going back to the roof framing plan, start adjusting the view. Don't forget that we don't need to see these things. We can click on the show crop region, which is kind of like a AutoCAD viewport, if I may say so, as a reference. And I'm going to drag this guy in. That way, anything that's outside the crop region is not going to show. Okay, and I can turn off the crop region once I'm done with it. Okay, and then I'm going to start my layouts. Now, remember on the AutoCAD video that you saw earlier, I showed you guys how to draw this layout. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to use our layout also with 24 inches of spacing. So in other words, the space between the rafters, I'm going to make it all 24 inches, even though I'll tell you right now, it's not always the case. But you'll have to determine that whenever you design your own home. In this case, I'm just going to, just to make it easier for all of us, I'm going to want the spacing all to be at 24 inches on center in all directions. And I also want you guys to create a line style. So I'm going to go to manage, and I want to create a line style. And once again, the line style that matches the roof framing. In this case, it's all looks like center lines. So I want you guys to create a line style under additional settings, line styles. By now, you should know how to do that. But I want you to create a new one called roof framing. Okay. And it looks like I had already created it. That's right. I did that right before this video. Sorry about that. But go ahead and create a new one. Going to call it roof framing. We're going to set it with a line weight of 2 and a line pattern of 1/4 inch center. And then we're just going to simply draw in the roof framing with detail lines. You're going to under annotate and detail lines, and we're going to start drawing in our roof framing 24 inches from the corner, and start drawing in our roof framing. Okay, one from the other, and I'll let you do that. As far as the text, I want the text to be, make sure that you use the 3/32 text. The 1/4 inch text is a little bit too big when you start putting in that text because it's just 1/4 of an inch in height. That's way too big. So make sure that the text we're going to be using, for the most part in all of our plans, is 3/32 Arial. Okay, what are we going to name it, or how are we going to, what text are we going to put in? Basically all this text: ridge boards, common rafters, bridging, any valley rafters, hip rafters, things like that. I want that to be labeled like that. And then as far as the text, don't forget that you can add leaders. We will need them. How many? As many as you need. Okay, and then you can start placing them and in the right location, so we can start labeling our roof framing. Once again, to name it with whatever proper notes that we have for these, as far as the bridging, common rafters, hip rafters, things like that. Okay. Don't forget that if you added too many, you can always subtract your leaders if you had too many, or you can add them to both sides. Depending on what you want to do, but nonetheless, we have that option right in there. And like I said, that is going to be how you create the roof framing plan. Well, I can get to the sheet. And then last but not least, don't forget to roof framing plan. Don't forget to create a PDF. Oh, you know what? Let me show you how to do this here. This little note needs to be brought in so that we can label this view as our roof framing plan. It's got this little line right in here. For that one, you select the view itself. You get that little dot and you bring it in. There we go. I like to have this one here so I can kind of label the view. That's really a norm or something normal that we do in our plans. That way we have the view, what the view is, and the scale of that one particular view. Because on our next lesson, I'm gonna have you guys draw in a wall section, and that wall section is gonna be drawn in this part of the sheet. So I kind of wanted to have that space, which is why we're using a 1/4 of an inch equals a foot scale. And we need to create the roof framing plan for a grade on this lesson.